Welcome to Leading from the Front with your host, Tony Hunter, Chairman and CEO for McClatchy Company and founder of TWH Enterprises. Leading from the Front is a series of one-on-one conversations with diverse, talented business leaders. During these inspiring talks, Tony digs in to uncover their secrets to success in today's ever-changing marketplace and highlights how his guests lead from the front in various industries, sectors, and communities. So please, join us on learning how to lead from the front.
My pleasure to welcome my good friend Ric Estrada to Leading from the Front. Ric is the CEO of Metropolitan Family Services. Metropolitan is one of Illinois' largest and most respected social service agencies in Chicago. Since 2011, Ric has helped the agency more than triple in revenue and families served. Ric has nearly 3 decades of public service in the city of Chicago. His civic and community involvement is extensive and includes serving as a trustee of the University of Illinois and board chair of the Woods Fund. He's also holding board memberships with the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, A Better Chicago, and the Council on Accreditation. In short, Ric has given his entire career to public service. And Ric, I've been on your board and I've had the pleasure of serving at your pleasure. And I know you are excited to talk about Metropolitan. So welcome to the show.
Hey, Tony, it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you.
So Ric, I always start with all guests to tell us about your journey and your career and your life. You know, we all have these chapters along the way, and I like to start by having our guests talk about your journey.
Yeah, absolutely, Tony. Thank you again, it's a pleasure to be here with you. My journey is relatively simple, so I try to keep it that way. Came to this country when I was 7 years old. Not an easy journey, but it's been a true blessing my entire life. It's been nothing but, to use nautical terms, relatively smooth sailing. In spite of, stormy weathers, it's been a really blessing to be around. Here's the critical point. I thought I was going to be an ordained priest. And it was in a jungle in South America that I had this epiphany that I enjoyed the work of mission more than I did the work that entailed in being ordained. And so I came back to the United States, to Chicago at the ripe age of 21, and decided then that I was going to leave the seminary and take up a life in who knows what. It ended up being this career that chose me in the nonprofit world, and I've been loving it ever since.
Well, Ric, you're a very humble guy. I would say you are one of the hardest working public servants I've worked with. And I know along the way you've had these hiccups. It's never a straight line. But from where I sit, one of your greatest attributes is leadership and your ability to rally people behind the mission of the organizations you've led. So why don't you talk about, in your current role, how do you see leading from the front? How do you express that? And how do you do that on a daily basis at Metropolitan?
Yeah. Again, Tony, leading from the front for me is sometimes a challenge, as people who know me know that, because I like the leading from behind sometimes more than I like the leading from the front. But certainly at MFS, coming in here and helping the organization over the course of nearly a decade to triple in size, there's been moments of leading from the front, including making sure that this organization doesn't see itself as being in competition with our community partners, and instead rallying them to be working together in collective action to solve some of the biggest issues here in our city and in our region. And as you know, it includes education and gun violence and domestic violence. And so we've been leading collaborative efforts in all 3 of those areas to help this region be better.
Yeah, I think that's a nice nuance, Ric. When I think of leading from the front, we don't talk about that literally. But your fingerprints are all over the agency, and your fingerprints are all over raising others up and creating opportunities for them where they're leading. But again, as we all know, it starts at the top. So again, I think you're right. It's not a literal interpretation of leading from the front. But your fingerprints have to be all over the mission and vision for the organization. I've watched that happen. Can you talk a little bit about Metropolitan? Why don't you hit on the 4 E's? I like that way you describe what Metropolitan does. Can you do that for us?
Sure. In describing the 4 E's, I should tell you, Tony, that it was an effort to get people like Tony Hunter, our board chairman, and other chairs of our different committees to have an elevator speech about what we do at MFS, because we do so much. We have 68 different programs here. So we decided to bucket them into 4 E's. And for us, we like to say it begins with education. So education is the pillar of our 4 E's, where we're providing early childhood development. And for those folks who don't know what that is, it's childcare and development of the youngest people through Head Start and other programs like that. So the E in education is the core. We have community schools in partnership with Chicago Public Schools that we offer. So that's the first one. The second one is economic stability. And as I think everybody could agree, the easiest way to solve a family's issues is to get them a job, and to not only get them a job, but get them a job that pays a living wage and where they can have dignity. So economic stability is the second one. The third one for us is emotional wellness, and that's counseling, behavioral health, therapy. We are one of the largest providers of mental health services in the region. And so it's a core to everything we do. It's in our DNA. And the last one is more of an all-encompassing word. It is empowerment. It's part of our tagline. Here's where we bucket our historic legal aid services, the second oldest legal aid clinic in the country, by the way. And then our violence reduction programs are all bucketed into that area. So those are our 4 E's. And we ask our board, all you need to do is remember one and tell people why you're passionate about it.
Well, that is why I'm so proud of being a board member and working with you, is that your Metropolitan has this umbrella of services, because as we all know, families and issues within families are multifaceted and require this umbrella of services. And it's what makes Metropolitan unique, but also difficult to describe. So I love the 4 E's. Ric, we all know the pandemic has caused havoc across all sectors, including yours, the social service agency sector. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you've had to do during this crisis, and how you as a leader have stepped forward to navigate what's been a very difficult year?
Yeah, Tony, navigating through this pandemic has been a learning experience for us. It's also been an opportunity to really lead in different ways. But I have 2 data points for you to share here. We had a board meeting today, and we talked about our response to the pandemic. And my colleague, who is executive director of our Nord Center, spoke about everything that we're doing in the pandemic. So just to give you a couple of examples, we have become a leader in hosting vaccination sites. We have been a leader in testing before the vaccinations. We have provided rental support. We provided support for food and for other necessities at home. And so this executive director was just talking about everything that we're doing. It amounted to nearly $3 million in services that came to Metro, but we put right back out into the community. But I ended up saying to her, that's great, but you need to tell the board that you did this on top of everything that you were already doing in the centers. This is not just what you're doing now. This is on top of everything. And she really reflected on that and said, wow, we really have done a whole lot here. And we've grown during this pandemic. So we've done the traditional work, added emergency relief services through the COVID, if you will, and we have grown in other core areas. So this pandemic, again, has shown the strength of the leaders of this organization And it's not me, Tony. It's these people that are leading the organization, that are doing God's work. It's just amazing to watch and be a part of it.
Well, I think you mentioned a couple of things: strength, and how strong a foundation Metropolitan has, both financially as well as core competencies, but also agility. And when things like a crisis occur, you really find out how agile your organization is and your people are. And I think what you just described is, you would never think that that could happen when you've tripled the number of families served, right? And on top of that, the things you just mentioned that you provided to the community when the need was exponentially higher during the pandemic. So that's one. And then the other one is, I just want to give you a kudos on, is you had a virtual event for the first time this year during the pandemic. And talk about leading from the front and rising to the occasion. You know, when we first started talking, Rick, we thought, woe is us. And what do you know? That's not the case. So I think that's another example of the strength of Metropolitan. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, Tony. We have an annual event here that 10 years ago, when you and I partnered up for the first time, we were finally able to get it to net $1 million worth of revenue for Metropolitan. And that was seen as, and it's still seen as, a monumental goal that we shared together. So thank you for that, first and foremost. But the pandemic hit. I quite frankly was nervous and thinking maybe we could hit 500,000 if we're lucky with all of our trusted supporters. I think we could do that. But what do we do about the $500,000 hole in our budget now? And here's the wisdom of teams. Our board executive committee, led by our board chair and the members of the committee, just came together in a way I've not seen in my nearly a decade here, and took ownership of the content of this event, and decided they were going to highlight our core issues, but they were going to be the stories told by our participants, not talking heads like me. And so we shifted our program. We focused on gun violence, which is an important issue going on, not only in the city of Chicago, but violence spiked across the country in every major city. And so we wanted to highlight what's going on to solve this issue of violence. And it was told by our participants. People embraced it. Our donors embraced it. And we ended up breaking every record fundraising wise that we've had. And so again, it's the wisdom of listening to people that are smarter than you.
Well, and also this speaks to the notion of, you have to have a leader that believes you can accomplish what it seems impossible. And yes, broke all the records for our first virtual event. But again, you don't do that unless you've built a strong set of supporters and you have great results. But I think that also speaks to leadership and being able to rally the team. And it's one of the greatest moments I've had working with you in a decade, is to see that number broken, the record broken on a virtual event. But it just speaks again to me to leadership and believing that you can do something. So let's talk about the community, because Metropolitan, as you've described it, really has its fingerprints all over the communities you serve. So talk a little bit about how you integrate your services into the community and why you believe that that recipe has been so successful.
Tony, Metropolitan is essentially a community-based organization. I think people look at us as the biggest legacy organization in the state. So we're the first chartered nonprofit in the state of Illinois, 1857, for those that keep track of those numbers. So from the outside looking in, we look like this mammoth human service organization. But in our DNA, we're a community-based organization. We are in 16 odd locations, I like to say, in locations inconveniently located where we are most needed. And so in the neighborhoods of Chicago, that includes Roseland and South Chicago and Englewood and the Midway Airport area and the Northwest Side and in the suburbs that need us most. And so we are part of the community, and that's really the answer. We're part of the community. The initiatives aren't thought up at some downtown location. The new initiatives are conceived in community space settings. They're brought to us. We kind of poke holes at them. Once we get input from more community members, then we start testing whether they're going to work or not. And then we start implementing it. And you used the word earlier that we could be agile. And they don't always look exactly like we drew them out to be. And we respond quickly. And that's what makes us, I think, part of the community.
Yeah, a lot of times when you talk about agencies and social service work, it really is a customer focused organization. You don't think about them as clients, right? But that's one of the things that I think is a strength of the organization is you really think about the needs of the customer and you design programs to meet those needs. You also have to build trust, Rick, and this is a difficult thing in these high need areas, right? The big Chicago metropolitan agencies come into our neighborhood. And what have you found to be most effective in building trust with your constituents?
Single most important thing for us, and it's the easiest thing as well, Tony, is we hire people that look like the people that live in those communities. So we are, of the big nonprofits in the state, we are by far the most diverse. And that's because, we put our money where our mouth is and we hire people who look just like the people we're serving. And that in and of itself engenders trust. And then after that, again, we recalibrate and make certain that we are listening to community folks, that when something isn't working, that they don't like, that they don't understand, it is our job, not theirs, to help them understand why it's important. And if it's not, then we have to stop doing it. And after, better parts of 3 decades, I think our brand is one that is trusted in community settings.
So what's next for Metropolitan, right? You've tripled in size. The need has never been greater. It will continue to grow. Pressure on funding. It is a disrupted space at this point. And so far, Metropolitan has stood tall and is succeeding. What do you see in the next 2 to 3 years for Metropolitan from where you sit?
Yeah, Tony, here's what I see for Metropolitan in the next 2 to 3 years. After this stormy patch, because even though we've been agile, it's not been easy. So after we get past this, and I think we're coming out of it now, we see light at the end of the tunnel. More people are being vaccinated. Testing has become very prevalent. So we see light at the end of the tunnel. So once we get past this, I believe 2 things are going to happen. One is the thing I say all the time that I believe to be true in my core. It's that people fund organizations they most trust. And going back to your previous question, and this is a trusted organization, not because I'm here, not because of the services we offer, but because we've been doing it for so long by trusted people with a ton of integrity that know what it means to care for the legacy of this organization, and importantly, the people we serve. So that's one thing. Secondly, we used to be called United Charities, and that's because we have brought in other organizations from time to time to strengthen what we do and strengthen what they do. I do foresee more consolidation in the marketplace, and I think Metropolitan will get plenty of organizations knocking at our doors, wondering if we should come together. Our job will be to find the organizations that add strength to what we already do, and we add strength to what they do, and be focused on our core competencies and the people we serve.
Right. And an example of that, Rick, is the domestic violence needs, which, in addition to the mental wellness pillar of strength, you merged with an organization around domestic violence. And I think that's an example of what you're talking about, where 1+1 = more than 2.
Right. Yeah, we merged with Family Shelter Services in DuPage, and everybody who has been through a merger knows that they're not always easy. And I'm not going to pretend this was easy because you're bringing together two cultures. But at the end of the day, we are strengthening each other, now being one, and more importantly, the victims of domestic violence have not only a shelter, but they have therapy and childcare and all the services that we offer, legal aid being a key component there for those victims. Um, Tony, we have a little experience with that as well. When the Hull House filed for bankruptcy, we were the first organization they informed. We helped them through that process, and we brought on some of their folks to be part of MFS. And now we essentially own the rights to the Hull House name. So we have some experience in this area, but there will likely be more.
Yeah, and you talk about ambition. It's not about growing to get larger, being the consolidator. It's to make sure the families and the individuals that need assistance aren't left hanging out there, or a way to bring organizations together to serve more people with the same amount of money. And that synergistic value is really important as you think about consolidation in this sector. And to your point, it should always come from the core of strength and finding organizations that together we're stronger than separately. So I think you've done a marvelous job of that, and integration appears seamless, at least from the outside. So Rick, we've talked a lot about Metropolitan, but as leaders, we're more than that, right? You're a son, you're a father, you're a husband, and you're the CEO of this company. And when I think about leading from the front, it is a lot of pressure to be a leader in all aspects of your life. Why don't you just talk a little bit about how you sort through that, and how you see your way through what are competing objectives at times?
Yeah, in many ways, Tony, it's a privilege, and I'm so fortunate to be at Metropolitan, because this organization believes that family, it's its middle name, right? We're literally Metropolitan Family Services. And so family isn't only about the families we serve, it's about the families that work here. And so I'm one of them. And so this organization has proven time and again, with me and with countless others, that when our family needs us most, that this agency is strong and resilient enough to let us go take care of that, because it's good for the agency that family is also good. And so that's the Metropolitan part. Secondly, I think I need to be as healthy as possible, both at home and at Metropolitan. So I've taken up things like meditation, just to keep my own whatever stress level, at an even kind of keel, if you will. And then I've taken up, I think we all have to take on hobbies that we need to work on just to do what keeps us whole. For me, it's been taking up at the old age of 50, whatever I am, up the bike for the first time, a bicycle, and I'm enjoying that. And I've decided to learn to play the guitar. I'm horrible, but I can play the guitar now, and it just gives my brain something to do and makes me be creative. I literally, before an important meeting, and I did this today, I'll pick up the guitar and play a little something just to get my brain activated differently. Then I sit at the meeting and I'm like, okay, I should have been doing this 30 years ago.
Right.
That's what I'm doing, Tony.
So I talk about adapting, evolving, and reinventing, and I hear a lot of that. Also, mind, body, spirit. And I knew that was a softball for you, because I know you and I talk about this a lot, but finding that place and staying in that good place, critical to being highly effective in any leadership role, whether it's at home, at work, or in your community. So, Ric, before we wrap, I have a couple of things. One, for the audience, why Metropolitan? There's a lot of agencies, a lot of opportunities of where you could give back, pay it forward. Give me the short story on why Metropolitan?
Boy, Metropolitan, because I am a sucker for legacy organizations. And this organization, again, it's the first chartered in the state. There's something about having service in the DNA that's not just 1 year old or 10 years old or 100 years old. In the case of this agency, going on 170, there's something about that that draws me to these organizations. And then, most importantly, it's the people here. They're just incredible people here at every level, beginning with our board of directors that are just amazing set of volunteers that are my bosses, pay to be a part of the organization, right? They donate to be a part of this organization. They do it with love and care. My colleagues that work here could be at leading other organizations, but they choose to be here and give their service to this organization. So for me, it's about the people. The people are inspiring to me, and I try to do the best I can to inspire them as well.
Well, so far so good, my man. You're on a decade of service in the role. You've grown the organization. So last thing, for the emerging leaders out there, the people that are thinking either of a career in social service or a leadership position in their future, what would be some advice that you would give to those emerging leaders as they start to think about their journey and their progression in life and in their career?
Yeah. For me, this is my favorite question, Tony. And it's always, I think, relatively easy. Is number one, just be positive. You get so much further by just having a positive attitude, and your glass is always half full. Everybody recognizes it, and you will have more leadership opportunities just because you're positive. That's first and foremost. Secondly, find and identify mentors. Without, they've been through it. Sometimes it's not about advice, it's about perspective, and you've showed me this. So find mentors. They could be older, younger, same age, different sector, but find and identify them, and then kind of be a sponge and take in that wisdom. And then finally, and it's related, don't be afraid to ask for help. I'm like, if I have any secret to the limited success I've had is, I know I'm not the smartest guy in the world or the most charismatic or whatever, but I know who is. And if I ask for help, people are willing, people are generous in their hearts, and they offer their perspective, advice, and work. And together, we go a lot farther.
Well, that's terrific. 3 things, Ric, that I have watched you do. And one reason I was so excited to have you join me for Leading from the Front, you lead with positivity. You do surround yourself with great people and different perspectives. And of course, as you know, you are always the first one in the room to say, what do you think? And that inclusion is what comes to my mind. It's more than you being humble, it's you include others in the solutions. And that's why Ric Estrada is one of the best CEOs in the social service sector in Chicago and the United States, and why he's tripled revenues and tripled the number of families served. So Ric, thank you for letting me serve on your board. It's been an honor. And thank you for joining me today on the show.
My pleasure, Tony. Thank you for having me.
All right, be well.